9 years ago, I completed a 100-mile ultramarathon. It was at the time, and still is, the toughest thing I've ever done. It was this really life-changing experience, setting, a big pie-in-the-sky type goal and then going out and achieving it. Since then, I've tried to run 100 miles 3 more times, and I've failed every single time. So when I was making my goal list for this year, I decided to quite literally double down and signed up for a 200-mile ultramarathon. The race I chose was the Cowboy 200, which goes from Norfolk, Nebraska to Valentine, Nebraska. I had really solid training coming into this race, accumulating about 800 miles in the 20 weeks leading up to it.
Only 200 miles to go! Let's go!
The race started off really well. I averaged about 10-minute miles for the first 22 miles, which was faster than any of my long training rounds. That was a little concerning, I felt maybe I was going out too fast, but I felt good, so I just kept up the pace. At the first aid station in Tilden, I got to see my wife and son, and then my brother-in-law and father-in-law. My wife's med school roommate actually lives in Tilden, and she came out to cheer me on, and her son ran with me, leaving the Tilden aid station.
I picked up an illegal pacer, but he's way too fast. Timmy, you gotta wait for me. That's not how this works.
It was this really cute, adorable moment until the guy in front of us just barfed all over the trail.
Hey, watch out, Timmy. Remember, you alright, man? Shit, just not staying down?
I just told you we were Pedialyte.
Yeah.
It was like an exorcism, just a waterfall of Pedialyte. I ended up running with that guy for a little bit. His name was Addison, and he was the cockiest guy I've ever met at any of these races. We were talking about our goals for the race, and he said his goal was to win the race. And I asked him, well, what sort of time do you think is going to win this race? And he replied, whatever time I run. I was thinking, if you're back here with me and already vomiting 20 miles into a 200-mile race, not looking too good for you winning this race. I would actually run with Addison multiple times throughout this race and would really warm up to him, but it wasn't the best first impression.
23 miles in, just went through the Tilden aid station, first manned aid station, or second manned aid station. Feeling pretty solid. Definitely don't feel like I normally do after 23 miles. Might have gone out a little fast, but try to stay on top of the nutrition. Saw my wife and my son, and they were nice enough to bring me some food.
There were some bridges out on the Cowboy Trail, so we had to divert on our way to Niwi on some country roads.
About 31 miles in, just went through Oakdale. Making good time. Just keep moving.
I still felt really good and came into Niwi in high spirits. Big shout out to Brooke Caxer, who took these incredible photos. Things didn't continue on as well, however. I had my first low point of the race during this next section. I had consumed a lot of sugar, which was really messing with my stomach, and I was also running low on toilet paper. So low, in fact, that I started foraging for the leafiest weeds I could find along the side of the road. Thankfully, I didn't actually have to use any of those weeds, but I was prepared just in case.
44 miles in. Starting to slow down a little bit. Still feel pretty good, but running like 12, 13 minute miles now. But whatever, we're way ahead of pace.
Attitude is everything in these ultramarathons, and the easiest way to a better attitude is to run with other people. I caught up to the runners ahead of me, a guy named James and a girl named Gibson. They were running buddies from Tennessee and go and compete in different ultramarathons together. It was a really big boost having people to talk to.
53 miles in. Definitely slowing down. Had a really low point there about 5 miles ago. But trying to keep some calories in and keep moving.
We crossed the 60-mile mark right around 12 hours, so we were making really good time. Night had fallen by the time we got to the Ewing aid station. I got a hamburger there, and just sitting there, I started shaking uncontrollably. The only way to maintain body heat was to keep moving.
65 miles in. Set just went through the aid station at Ewing. Feeling surprisingly good for this distance, so we'll see if we can't just keep jogging all the way to jogging, shuffling around to get to O'Neill. I think that's where I'll nap for the first time. I've been running with these two people up here 4th and 5th place. They've been nice enough to drag me along. All right, let's keep going.
I continued on with Gibson and James, and their strategy was to run half a mile and then walk half a mile. James' knee was really bothering him, and I was feeling pretty tired too, but Gibson was full of energy, and she pulled us both along. She would actually go on to end up winning the women's race. I had trouble keeping up with their run-walk strategy, so I decided to run a little bit slower, but walk a little bit less, and I pulled a little bit ahead of them. As night fell, the winds really picked up. This course was completely exposed, and we had 15-mile-per-hour headwinds coming into O'Neill. The video I took during this section is unintelligible because of the high winds.
Been really beautiful walking. It's super windy out here. It's super windy, maybe 15 miles an hour. Another 7 miles to make it to O'Neill. I've been out for a couple hours.
At the O'Neill aid station, I decided to sleep for the first time. My father-in-law was generous enough to drive my SUV from aid station to aid station, and I had an air mattress set up in the back of the car. I wasn't sure what a good sleep strategy was for a multi-day endurance event, so I decided to sleep 4 hours in O'Neill, which turned out to be way too long. I thought I would wake up feeling like refreshed and ready to run again, but instead I woke up feeling like I had just run 85 miles. I got passed by so many people while I was sleeping. I hobbled out of the O'Neill aid station with the goal for day 2 of covering 60 miles, making it to the Long Pine aid station.
Day 2. It's 6 in the morning. I slept for about 4 hours. Just probably about 2 or 3 hours too many. I thought I'd sleep and feel rejuvenated, but that just was not the case. So, back out here walking. I'd be really pleased if I could get 60 miles today. That'd leave me 54 tomorrow. See if I can't get the legs to loosen up a little bit and do just a little bit of running. 12-minute miles rather than 16-minute miles.
There's this unspoken reality about these ultramarathons that nobody actually runs the entire distance. A large majority of the race is spent walking. I walked and walked until I met up with Rebecca, who told me about her strategy for taking ibuprofen, which was that I could take 2 tablets every 6 hours as long as I was peeing. And that's the strategy I ended up using the rest of the race. Coming through 100 miles was a reality check.
100 miles done. Halfway. 57 hours to complete the last 100 miles. So, less than 2 miles an hour. Just gotta keep moving.
I was thinking that 100 miles I just did was insanely difficult, and now I have to do 100 more miles. The one time I successfully completed 100 miles, I had to call in sick the next day to work because I couldn't physically walk down the stairs in my condo. The aid station in Atkinson was excellent, with some warm breakfast food and the most positive volunteers. I took a nap for 45 minutes at this aid station, and when I woke up, my legs were just seized up. I was really shocked how less tired I felt after these short naps, but also how quickly my body could just seize up. I limped out of the Atkinson aid station thinking, just as long as I continue walking, even at a slow pace, I'll be able to finish before the 84-hour cutoff.
So I took maybe a 30-minute nap at the aid station in Atkinson in addition to using the restroom and getting some good food. So I feel pretty refreshed right now. Spent a lot of time there. Spent like over an hour at that aid station. But I think I definitely have time. I just need to keep slowly moving forward. Don't need to rush things. Try to enjoy this a little bit more.
I was able to walk about 17 to 20-minute miles during this section and really didn't want to try running. I thought, this running might cause more damage than it's worth and might prevent me from walking even at this slow pace in this future. Addison passed me again during this section, and we did this whole tortoise and the hare thing where he'd run a little bit ahead of me, but then have to stop and stretch at different points, and I would just continue chugging along, walking at my slow but consistent pace.
At 118 miles. Oh shit. Out here by myself again. Legs are pretty stiff, so it take some ibuprofen for that. Help out with that, but I think I'll take a nap at the next aid station here in 7 miles. Maybe I'll try and get another 20 miles in overnight.
This section of trail diverted from the highway a little bit and was really beautiful. Night had fallen for the second time when I came into the aid station at Newport.
75 miles to go. I slept for about 45 minutes there in Bassett, and now we got 21 miles to the next manned aid station in Long Pine, and it's gonna be a cold night. I get down to 26, which isn't really that bad, but pretty cold when you're not moving fast. Yeah, 7-hour leg here. Just keep moving.
This 21-mile section was awful. Within the first hour, my body was cold, and it would be another 6 hours until I got to the next manned aid station. Luckily, I met another runner named Anne, and we did this entire section together. Talking to her really helped numb the drudgery of this section of walking. This was probably the worst part of this race. There were unmanned aid stations about halfway between all of the manned aid stations. The unmanned aid stations just had water and an electrolyte drink. When Anne and I came through the small town of Bassett, I was looking on my phone trying to find any business that was still open at 10 o'clock at night, but everything was closed. I thought we should try to go check out the church 3 blocks down the road to see if they left their doors unlocked all the time, but Anne convinced me that we should just keep moving on. Just stopping to fill my water up at that unmanned aid station, I started shaking uncontrollably, and my hydration bladder started freezing up again. It's easy to think, that you're mentally tough, that you've got, the right stuff, until you're actually in one of these situations. That night, walking in the freezing cold, I didn't have it. I was just miserable and wallowing in my own pity the entire time. The 10-mile section from Bassett to Long Pine was a real slog. I don't think I would have made it if I didn't have Anne to talk to the entire time. Getting to the Long Pine aid station was such a relief. Not only was I able to warm up, but I also got a big plate of pasta, which really hit the spot. So I went to take a nap in the back of my SUV, but taking off my shoes was really difficult because my feet had swollen up so much. I was in for another surprise when I just tried to take off my right sock. There'd been some rubbing and bleeding on the toes on my right foot, and that dried blood kind of stuck the sock to my foot. My feet were really messed up at this point. I took about a 2-hour nap, but luckily this aid station had showers, so I went and took a shower and tried to clean up my feet as best I could and get them bandaged up to hopefully survive, just 54 more miles. It took all the courage I could muster to walk out of Long Pine. I mean, physically just to walk. My feet were just demolished.
146 miles in, just left the aid station in Long Pine. The trek from whatever the last manned aid station before that to Long Pine was super rough. Started shivering if I stood still for more than 1 minute. So now I'm fully bundled up. All right, 54 miles to go and 36 hours to do it. I can walk 20-minute miles, get this done in 18 hours. All right.
The one thing I did learn through this race was, just as long as you push long enough, eventually, your brain stops registering the pain signals and the pain subsides a little bit. So I was able to walk about 20-minute miles on my way to the next aid station in Ainsworth. I got to watch the sunrise on my way to Ainsworth and hear all the coyotes barking. I took about a 45-minute nap when I got into Ainsworth. This is what my sleep setup looked like. I had an air mattress as well as some pillows and a comforter. It was actually really comfortable, and I slept well each and every time. Again, I was shocked at how quickly my legs seized up even after that short nap. I had been walking like 20-minute miles before that, and then I could barely limp along after getting out of the car after 45 minutes. I couldn't get out of my head that entire morning, just over and over doing the math about how long it was going to take to finish.
Took another about a 30 or 45-minute nap at the Ainsworth aid station. So it was 8 miles from Long Pine to Ainsworth. I was getting a little tired, so took a little nap. Now back out here again. Just gonna keep walking it in. About another 16 hours of walking to get this thing finished. It's supposed to be pretty windy today, but luckily all that wind's supposed to be coming from our back, so it'll be a nice tailwind. I was really surprised how sore I was after just a 30-minute nap. 30 minutes off my feet, and standing up, and it was just really sharp pain. But just walk it off and get to a pace I can hold for a long time. So about 18 to 20 minutes a mile walking.
I was really miserable at this point and just had a super bad attitude, just ready to be done with this event.
6 miles to go. It's gonna be a long day, chugging along. Ready to be done with this. I'm ready to be done with this since the first day. Don't ever let me do this again. No more ultras for me.
There was a woman about a mile up ahead of me that I'd been following the entire morning. I finally decided, hey, let me push for a little bit and catch up to her, and then at least I'll have somebody to share this misery with. So I put on some music and started yelling at myself and was actually able to run a 12-minute mile in order to catch up to her. That was a little bit of a revelation. The first, 100 yards of pushing through the pain in my feet was really tough, but after that I just felt super motivated and the mile came pretty easily. I walked with Rebecca for about 4 miles and then decided to see if I could kind of replicate what I had previously done with that 12-minute mile. There were about 35 miles left at this point, so I didn't think I'd be able to run the rest of the race at that pace, but I wanted to see what I could do. And to my surprise, I was able to run 12-minute miles. Not only 12-minute miles, but I actually ran 2 10-minute miles. It was really surprising how much a shift in mindset affected my performance. I went from feeling like down on myself and wallowing to just super motivated and ready to take it to the race. Like, no more excuses. I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to run. It was tough to keep this up. I could always feel like the self-doubt inching in as I was running. And then, no joke, I would actually yell at myself in the middle of nowhere to keep moving. And this strategy was effective.
Go!
I was running so much faster than I had previously that I actually beat my father-in-law to the next aid station. Not only was I running faster, but I just had such a better attitude. I felt great coming into that last aid station at Woodlake. That pace had been absent for the last 80 miles, but somehow near the end of the race I was able to click off about 22 miles at this 10 to 13 minute per mile pace.
20 minutes to go. Super strong tailwind. Let's get this.
And even when I started running out of energy, I was still able to maintain about 15-minute miles for the last 10 miles. With about 7 miles to go, this big animal scurried across the trail, and I looked and I thought, oh shoot, that's a bobcat. I thought, well, here's where my race ends. 7 miles from the finish and mauled to death by a rabid bobcat. I kept having to repeat to myself, he's more afraid of you than you are of him. He's more afraid of you than you are of him. But looking back over my shoulder, I could see its glowing eyes out in the field.
Just saw a bobcat or something. Holy fuck. That's not what I need right now. Oh, there he is. You see his eyes?
The last 10 miles of this race felt like it would never end. I felt like I was running uphill when in reality I was actually running downhill. And there was this like ridgeline off in the distance that I thought, once I get over that ridgeline, I'll finally be able to see the city of Valentine and the finish. But it just never came. I was so elated to finally make it to the bridge in Valentine.
It's another 2.5 miles to the finish, but this bridge is really close to the finish. Oh shit. I've been dreaming about this bridge. Fuck, the last 70 hours. I don't think you can actually see anything. It looks... Yeah. Can't see anything because it's the middle of the night. But it's a really cool bridge. Holy fuck. 2.5 more miles. And we're all done with this dumb adventure.
There was no joy in finishing this race, only relief.
Nice job! All right! Woo! Good job, John!
Nice job.
I've done ultramarathons where I've been miserable before, but nothing where I've been miserable this long and had to just keep moving and moving and moving. So 55 people started this race and only 34 finished before the cutoff. My total time for this race was 64 hours and 6 minutes, which was good enough for 8th place. First place finished this race in 52 hours, doing a walk-run strategy the entire time. So here's the belt buckle finishers got for completing the 200-mile ultra. Huge thanks to my father-in-law for crewing this entire event. I literally could not have done it without him. He's such a selfless person, which is exactly what you need in an event like this. Not only to sacrifice his time, but to be, a positive voice of encouragement. Every time I do one of these events, I always think, never again. But I do seem to get a lot of clarity from doing these. There were 3 big realizations for me. The first was that these ultra distance events just really aren't that important to me. And if I'm going to go through the effort and the suffering in order to complete them, then I should make sure I'm putting in an equal or greater amount of effort and potentially suffering into things that are far more important and valuable to me. Training for and completing this race was rough, and that effort is probably better directed to other facets of my life. I'm not saying I'm not going to do an ultra again, but what I am saying is that I want to make sure that I'm putting forth that effort into areas that are more fulfilling to me before I put it into, doing another ultra. Number 2 is the value of being much tougher on myself. Those 22 miles I was able to run at the end of the race were an example of what a shift in mentality can do. Everything was feeling pretty hopeless at that point, but by being tougher on myself, not only was I able to perform better, but I enjoyed the race more. And there are other areas of my life where I'm not living up to my own personal expectations, where I'm just kind of plodding along and making excuses. The final realization is kind of antithetical to the second one, but it's that I need to be more empathetic, especially towards my wife. She's 20 weeks pregnant and works a very demanding job, and I need to be more sympathetic to her situation, even if it feels like I'm always giving more than I'm receiving. I tend to have an attitude personally that, complaining really gets you nowhere. And I need to stop expecting other people to have that same attitude. While I feel that these events are pretty pointless in the moment, they always do seem to bring this sense of calm and clarity. So that was goal number 9 on my list. I've got a lot of work to do to accomplish the other 33 goals on my list.